Welcome to the Unlearn show. All five of us are absolutely thrilled to have you on here as a guest. Just to walk you through some of the basics for the next 20 to 30 minutes, we're just going to be chatting with you, just like this conversational style, about breaking bad habits with a purpose. And really, we're going to be asking you a few questions
Is that him or is that my side? Is he?
That's him.
Where you are today, so in the present, and then of course we'll finish.
Oh my gosh. I have a Transformer shirt on and I think he's like mimicking a Transformer. Good. I got all of that, Sonny. It sounded great.
I was trying to take you back into the past, and then you're going to go into the future.
I thought you were really trying to get on Katie's nerves by really slowing things down so she couldn't get to Austin.
Yeah, we're gonna do our best to piss her off.
Oh, thanks. But you still sound like a robot.
No,
He's using the Marco Polo like slow-mo robotic.
Yeah.
Hello.
Wrong app, study. Wrong app.
all right, how's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Sonny's always like in a bus, or at least he's not drinking this time.
Or is he?
Or is he?
Yeah. Is he driving too?
Driving.
Maybe.
We did a group call for one of there's a pod that I'm in, and we did it's not the fun pod. You all are in the fun pod, but like Frazier was on it, Mike, Quentin, and some other folks, and I won't get into why it got really weird. But
Well,
I made a joke, and then someone else just dropped a bomb that it was like completely silent. But Mike took a picture of it, and it was like 8 o'clock, and I was drinking wine, and he took a snapshot, and everyone is there like smiling, and I'm just in the background like totally downing wine. I was like, that is perfect.
good brand. I like it.
Engine purred.
So Curt, we'd love to have you start with where, just a little bit about yourself. Feel free to, if at any point you feel like you want to focus on something or you want us to ask you or talk about certain things. And then each one of the co-hosts will just ask you questions. And then towards the end, we'd love to give you a couple of minutes where if you have something you'd like to ask us or just some things that you'd like to speak about, we like to leave the last couple of minutes just kind of open for you. All right?
It's a lot of pressure.
Dumbledore can handle it.
Cool. So am I starting, or are you going to ask, or do I just, what do you do?
We're gonna actually start now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready?
So welcome to the UnLearn show, Curt. We're super excited to have you here. As most folks on LinkedIn know, you are the founder, the owner of the Freedom Club. We'd love for you to start there. Tell us a little bit about it, what you do, and then throughout the entire UnLearn show, each of the co-hosts are going to be asking you a few questions. So we're super excited to have you here. Thanks for giving us some of your time this weekend.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I've been a huge fan of the UnLearn show, every single one. And it's really great. It's one of the best things about the new LinkedIn, I guess I like to call it, because a lot of people like me have been on there, gosh, probably, I don't know, 2003, 2004, before Chantel was born. And, and so, but it's been wonderful. And UnLearn is a great part of that. I'm a coach. People ask me what kind of coach I am, and it's something I struggle with. And, I have some high school friends that joke, they're like, oh, you're a life coach. And I used to be like, no, I'm not a life coach. But now I'm like, sure, if you want to call me a life coach, if you want to call me an executive coach, I started, coaching because I had gone through a lot of different difficulties, struggles, et cetera, in building my own business, where I felt like I built a prison instead of a business where I wanted to give it up. I was frustrated, hated my clients. I was taking clients who undervalued me. lack of sleep. It led to physical issues. And so I wanted to, about 2 or 3 years ago, I started unofficially coaching my clients. I had a public relations and advertising agency. And what I realized is that I really loved the coaching. And, while I'm a writer and I'm a communicator, and I thought, well, I'm playing to my strengths. There's a difference between skills and strengths. And so I was using skills, but like, for instance, I used to love to write ever since I was younger. And I had for 10 years begun to hate writing, And so at the end of the day, I'd think, I'm doing well. I guess I'm supposed to be doing this. And I had this guilty feeling that I don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so when I started unofficially coaching people, I had that feeling like, yeah, I really love doing this, and the agency work, not so much. And so I decided to go all in, and went and got my certification from Gallup, the Gallup organization, because their Strengths Finder program was the basis of the program that I started to turn myself around. And I had tried a number of things to get clients other than word of mouth, none of which work. And then I started doing videos on LinkedIn. And for about maybe 60 days, it was crickets. And then some people gave me some great advice. I took the advice, and then it just turned around on a dime. It was crazy.
Wow, that's cool.
That's awesome, Curt. And I think which one of the hosts wanted to start with Curt this morning?
I will, please.
Awesome.
Okay. Mr. Mercadante.
I could tell this question is going to be cheesy.
No, maybe. Wisconsin. So I'm a big fan of yours because I can tell that you have that PR advertising background, because you kill it in every message that you deliver. What's your purpose, your why behind the Freedom Club? I know you kind of got into it there, like you weren't happy with the way things were, but what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to change this? What was that switch that happened?
I had a lot of, you mean what, change it with my company when I was overwhelmed, or
Well,
jump into?
Yeah. What was that moment, that defining moment that made you change paths?
Yeah. So for several, I was unofficially coaching people. We started to make a number of decisions where I had a friend called me a rabid nonconformist. We're homeschooling all our kids. We're leaving, a lot of people in Illinois, you talk to them, not in the city as much, but like outside the city, it's the economy in Illinois is really bad. And so you get a lot of people saying, you talk to them, they're like, I would leave here if I could. I would get out of here if I could. But then when you leave, they're like, what are you doing? That's wrong. You can't do that. You can't leave here. And so we made a lot of life decisions that led, my friend to call me a rabid nonconformist, and people just know we do things differently. And so people, while they would say those things, then they would come to me on a one-on-one basis, like, gosh, how do you do it? I want to do that. I want to be free.
Yeah.
And so I kept having that feeling like, listen, I really want to help people. I'd always been a fan of like Tim Ferriss and other folks like that. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. But people started telling me like, listen, you're helping people. I was unofficially coaching. And so when I decided to go into coaching, I hadn't even yet really found my why. I knew I wanted to move in that direction. And then it really was kind of embracing, every coach should have a coach behind them. Fraser Cameron really helped me, who you all know probably. And I have a big, as you can tell, and I can tell Jake, based on what's in his background, does too. I talk about superheroes a lot. I wear superhero shirts. My kids and I are like, there's like our daily weekly fight is, are you DC or are you Marvel? I mean, we're so into it. And I always was that. I always had that. And my dad was, you can actually see some of his patents up there behind me. He was like Tony Stark. He worked in the defense industry, helping develop switches for fighter jets. He worked on the space program, the Boeing 777. And I was like math, like moron, right? I could not do math or whatever. And so I always had imposter syndrome, like my dad's saving the world and I'm just writing press releases. And so when I started coaching, I had that feeling that no, now I'm saving the world. And I always talk about superheroes, and Fraser's like, dude, you need to envelop this. So a big part of my why became embracing that. And, you know, my vision, my why is to save the world by helping other people fight for freedom and fulfillment. So I have a poster that I put together, and it's got a superhero on it. And so I use that, and, you know, I talk about it in, I have coaching packages now that are, one's called Bruce Wayne, one's called Tony Stark. And it's like, if people don't like that, then don't hire me. I don't care.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I don't know how somebody wouldn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they don't, it's like, I don't really want to work with you. So
Yeah. You're not fun.
Yeah.
Fine.
So my question's going to be, this is a little maybe selfish of me because this is one of my favorite things that you say. And I'm going to butcher it. So I'm just going to give you the punchline and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. So you always say, there's not all these pieces, there's just life. And so I would love to have you kind of dig a little deeper into that, maybe where that came from, where that stemmed from, and explain that a little bit, because that's my favorite.
Sure. Yeah, it comes from, and I'm sure it's kind of a collection of things I've read in books. Tom Rath, who writes a lot of the Gallup Strengths books, he might have hinted at it. I know John Maxwell probably hints at it as well, that everyone's looking for work-life balance. And I was always looking for work-life balance. Oh, I need the balance. And it was as if like I was on a seesaw or a teeter-totter. And it's like work's over here and life's over here. And so first of all, you know, there's just life. And so if you just look at it as separate, it's always going to be separate. And so you can have balance, but it's still going to be separate. And that helps build walls between you, your family, you and your kids. And if you do look at it that way, like there's work over here and life over here, and you try to have balance, what a lot of people do is they say, okay, well, this week I'm really going to focus on work, but that's fine because it's all going to balance out because next week I'm going to spend more time with the kids. And it either doesn't happen that way, or that week turns into, all right, I'm 30 years old. What I have to do is just work my tail off. I got to be in a comfort zone of misery. I got to put my head down and work to 65. And then it'll all balance out, because once I get to 65, then I'm going to have fun, and then I'm going to be retired. And what people don't realize is, if you have kids, by the time you get to 65, maybe you've missed a big part. You don't recognize them, right? They're getting married. They're going off to wherever. But I know I have relatives, and I know a lot of other people who they get to 65. Great, we're going to retire. Cancer, a spouse gets sick, people die, people pass away. Tim Ferriss writes about this, that, you know, why are you giving away the prime years of your life for you know, health-wise? Now, you could be 65. I know some 65-year-olds. I mean, hell, Arnold Schwarzenegger's 70, right? But the notion is, listen, there's a lot of things you can do. Why are you, you know, time is not a renewable resource. So why are you giving that up to 65? And I didn't really understand that, what that meant, until probably the last 3 or 4 years. You hit, and I was just talking to a friend of mine who's about to turn 50, and he's laughing, and he said, you know, I had a friend who it was either after high school or college. I think it was after college. And he's like, you know, I was going to get a job. My friend's like, I'm going to Europe for a year and I'm just going to travel. He's like, I looked at my friend and said, you are so stupid. He said, now I'm sitting back, I'm about to turn 50. And I think I was so stupid that he's like, cause he's never been outside of the United States in 30 years. You think you have all this time. And then once you get to that point, and there's a lot of things, you know, my clients, people who come to me, it's funny. It's not funny. It just is what it is. I had a customer avatar, you know, when you start out, of like 35 to 45, like agency owner to a person. The people who have come to me and into my program are 45 to 55. There's an outlier. She's actually 64. And a lot of it was, one of my clients told me the other day, listen, I had and I know exactly what they read. They're all Gary Vee, Richard Branson. They read all that. And one client told me the other day, you know what the thing is, I read all that for 10 years and I was a do-it-yourselfer and it just didn't work. And so now I'm about to turn 50 and I realize time's slipping away. but you just need to get to that point where you realize that. And, you know, it's not that you can't make a change on your own, but you get to that point where you realize there's not work over here and life over here. It's just life, and you can't wither away. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
long answer.
Still my favorite.
Thanks.
Dig it.
I'm sure I stole it, but
That's okay.
So I guess kind of going off that, I've always wanted to ask Dumbledore a question. So this is my opportunity. What's the single most important piece of advice that you could give someone that is going through a similar experience that you went through, and you know, turned it all around?
The single piece, well, as you were asking that question, one thing came to mind, but then as you finished the question, something else entirely came to mind, which is that life is a choice. That I talk to people all the time who are like, you know, I was in the public affairs, public relations, worked in trade associations in DC, and someone came to me and offered me a job or a project. And I said, sorry, I'm completely out of that. And he said, oh my gosh, I wish I could get out of it. Then I talked to someone else, a former client. And he's like, you know, I would quit here if I could, but I can't because my salary's at X. And I hear that over and over. I would if I could, but I can't. As if everything in your life isn't a choice. And I think people have to realize that before they can move forward. I had a situation where someone, and I won't get too detailed for that I don't get in trouble, but they were talking about a person that we both know who had made a series of I don't know, 1,000 bad choices in his life to get to a point where he's at now. He started to turn it around, but then things happen, right? There was a natural disaster, some things happen, and the other person I was talking to said, oh, he's just got such bad luck. He just tries things in bad luck. And I didn't say anything at the time, but it's like, well, no, there was a series of 1,000 bad choices that led him to this point. You might need 1,001 good choices to offset that. Maybe you need 10, but it's not luck. I put life as a choice in a LinkedIn post the other day, and someone said, that's just not, I'm paraphrasing, that's not true. Some people are in a circumstance where they just can't dig themselves out of. And I hear that, and it's probably mean for me to say that's not true. I don't care really, because I get messages. There have been days just off my videos where I am in tears. It was like a Monday, and I was just totally overwhelmed by the message I was getting from people around the world. You know, a young woman that many of you probably know, and she emailed me and said she grew up in a polygamy family of 18 with 2 moms, worked her way out of it, graduated from the university, and now started an agricultural nonprofit. And so there's someone like that who decided that her life was a choice, and then someone says, no, it's not a choice. You know, I see it every day that people make choices that dig themselves out of whatever they're in. I mean, look at Toph. Look at, you know, people who have been near death, near suicide, or worse, and they decide to make a choice to pull themselves out of it. So kind of the victim mentality, I understand it. I have empathy for people who have that. But I also understand that once you decide that life is a choice, and that your situation, your past situation was made up of, your current situation was made up of your past choices, and your next step is a choice for you, that's the only way that you're gonna have real freedom in your life.
Good question. So when you're talking about, you know, the circumstantial thing and how you can finally give up that victim card and choose hope, how do you help your clients eliminate the fear of failure? Because I feel like that's the biggest thing holding most people back, right?
Yeah. So fear is the number one piece, and it either holds them back or propels them forward in some cases. And I've had some people who come in and they'll hire me because they've decided that the fear is too great and they can't take it anymore. And those people are like, yeah, it's like a 10-minute call, and they're like, I'm in. Then I have people who, I had one person jump into the program, and she had, I think, a fear of actually doing the work because she was afraid of the unknown that comes past it. You know, it's like when you're driving in fog, right? You don't know what's on the other side of the fog. You could go off a cliff, you could hit another car, but you have to go through it. I think that was what Lightning McQueen in Cars, right? There was the wreck and he had to drive through the smoke to get to the other side. And so there's two pieces of that. One is that everyone within them has superpowers. And I have a client who said, I'm sorry, I've been told I'm a simple person and that I have non-medicated ADHD. And so that's really my weakness that we have to work on. I said, no, man, that's your superpower. We're going to find you a role that suits you around that. Thomas Edison was told he had an addled brain. They probably would have put him on meds today. And his mom pulled him out of school and said, yeah, you have an addled brain and you're going to use that. So that's one thing, is that the superpowers are within you and you have to find the ones that are unique to you. And that's how you also get past the imposter syndrome. The second part is, once you get there, and I have people who are like, can we skip the self-awareness part? Can we just skip to the end of the action plan? But as we start going through the self-awareness part, they realize their superpowers. And then you start putting together a performance plan based on those superpowers. And they're like, holy cow. Yeah, okay, it doesn't seem so scary because I take one step today. I take one step. I had never heard it, but a client said, yeah, what's the best way to eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time. Yeah. I probably totally butchered that, but
I think that's right.
Yeah. So it's true.
So, Curt, what would you say is something you still struggle with being a victim around? Because we're all broken, right? I mean, we're all just human, just trying to do our best.
Yeah.
So what is it that still trips you up day to day?
I go back into bad habits, or for instance, last week was a horrible week. I went back into some bad habits. And so I used to, like a lot of people, Sunday night, I would make a list of all the things. I got my notebook here, and I'll make a whole list of things that I'm going to do through the week. And I tell people, when you do that, it's like trying to shove all the kids' dinner down the garbage disposal at the same time. It just clogs up. None of it goes down, and so I stopped doing that. And on a daily basis, I'll do the big five, right? And I'm an activator. That's one of my strengths. And so, but I also have responsibility. So those two things combined, if it's on my big five and it's on there, and I have Basecamp that I use, a program that emails me, even though it's just a bot emailing me, that triggers my responsibility. Like, oh gosh, Basecamp is going to email me and ask me if I got my things done today, right? So if I have those 5 things on, you could put the Chinese army in front of me and I'm going to get them done. It does not matter, Well, I went back to old habits. I started getting a little manic last week. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to launch my website. I got to do 3 podcasts. I got to do this. And I wrote them all down on Sunday and I got like 4 things done. Then I came off a week of travel. I have to get sleep. I got to get, I'm paleo in my diet. I have to balance certain things. Otherwise my cortisol goes up, triggers anxiety. Well, it all triggered. And it hit on Friday and Saturday night, and it was bad news. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of being overwhelmed, but it was those bad habits. And so that's why every coach should have a coach, wherever, everyone should have a coach. But Frazier just slapped me in the face. He's like, I got to kick your ass today. And it's like, yeah, what am I doing? My wife's great about that. She's like, why did you do that? Why the hell did you do that? Would you tell your clients to change? I'm like, yeah, you're exactly right. So falling back into some of those bad habits, trying to do too much at once. There was a recent instance where I say, and it's probably my responsibility, I say yes too much. I have a real problem saying no. And it was something I should have said no to. And I knew in my heart that it was going to come to a head. And so I had to say no, and this person was upset and whatever else. But those are some of the, there's a whole endless list, but.
I think that's everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's going through something. There was someone shared it. It was Kevin Love. I didn't read the whole thing, an article. But Kevin Love who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers, wrote an article, I think, in the Players Tribune, and it was titled "Everyone's Going Through Something," and he detailed his struggles with anxiety attacks. And one of the most interesting things of being on LinkedIn is that I realized Bobby Umar's had some things on it, that I've had anxiety attacks, And, I know how to control certain things now, diet, certain sleep and everything. The amount of people who go through that and never tell a person, never tell a soul about it. So, yeah.
So Curt, looking to the future for you, if you had one goal that you were asked to share, and the second part of the question is something that's happened in the past that you had to unlearn that is going to contribute to you reaching that goal in the future. Can you share what that one thing is?
Yeah. So I kind of have yearly goals. I want to save the world. So I have yearly goals in terms of reaching a certain number of people. I want to have 250,000 downloads of my podcast. I want to have this year, and and so I set these big audacious goals. I want to have $1 million coaching program by the end of next year, not for the money, but because if I have reached that amount, it means that my classes had enough people in it. My one-on-one had enough people in it, that my podcast was reaching enough people. I think the thing that I've had to unlearn the most is I used to be a real arrogant prick. And I thought I knew everything. And I didn't go to, I think at one point my roommate and I figured out that I went to 19% of my classes in college. And my number one strength is learner, but I can't sit and I like reading. I like self-directing learning, but if you tell me you have to learn these 5 things, no, forget it. I won't do it. So I had internships, I had jobs, I worked because that's what I loved doing. I didn't want to just sit. And so when I came out of college, I was just really arrogant. Well, I know how to do that. I know how to do this. And it got me, it helped me in some cases. I moved up pretty quickly on political campaigns that I worked on and some other things. But it also rubbed the wrong way because I would come in as a change agent and I would just say, screw you, screw you, screw you. Part of that is that's who my dad was. He would come in as a management consultant and part of his job was cleaning up messes. And so, I would kind of do that without a sense of empathy in many cases, but it took a number of setbacks at business. I actually ran for office twice, lost twice in 4 years. And then my dad passed away 3 weeks after one of those losses. And so there was a lot of that I came out of that with a sense of, I don't know anything. I don't know, and so I learn every day. And so I think that's the biggest thing I had to unlearn was that I need to learn every day. And I don't know the amount I don't know even now. At 42, I realize that I know so much less than, when I was 20, I thought I knew everything. So I don't know if that just made sense when I said, but
we're gonna pretend like it does. That's your superpower to convince us of that. No, so we're gonna go around to all the co-hosts. If give everybody a chance to ask you one last question if they have one, and if they don't, Curt, we'd love to give you the last 3 to 4 minutes if you'd like to ask any of us a question or each one of us a question, or even if you just wanted to have just some conversation. So any of the co-hosts, any final thoughts or questions for Curt?
You talk about superpowers. What would be your superpower if you could have one?
Listening and learning. Actively listening, but to
Come
learn.
on. I mean, that's doable, but what's invisibility?
Oh, like a real superpower?
Yes.
If I had a real superpower, you know what? It's interesting because my 2 favorite are, and it's a big fight in my house and I go back and forth, is Batman and Iron Man, because they don't actually have superpowers.
Right.
Their superpowers are up here.
Yeah.
And, in Justice League, the Flash says, what's your superpower? He's like, I'm rich. And that's why I like those 2 the best, because it's like, what's his name? I was going to say Deadpool. Who's in Batman versus Superman? Doomsday is destroying the city, right? He's kicking Superman's butt. And here's Batman. He's got no superpowers at all. And he's just like, all right, I'll go take it. I'll take it from here. And, that type of, I guess, courage mixed with just the brains to put stuff together and think of every contingency possible. That's the greatest superpower. Like, all right, you can fly, you can do all this. It's like, yeah, but Batman's still going to kick your butt.
He's a tinkerer. He likes to tinker and
Exactly.
Innovate. Love it. Good
And I
answer.
can't do that. My son does that. If I give him stuff, I give him instructions and he puts it together. So I say he's Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne. And if I gave him enough money and enough time, he'd build the Iron Man suit. I swear.
Yeah.
And it'd be made of Legos too, which would be cool.
Yes.
Any other co-hosts have any questions for Curt, or can we give Curt a minute to ask us anything if he'd like to? Awesome. Curt, the floor is yours for the last minute or two. What would you?
So I have a question. I have a question for you all. So in my podcast, the first question I ask everyone, although I realized I didn't ask you, Sonny, but it was weird. I don't know how we were just gotten to the conversation, but the question I ask everyone is, what does the word freedom mean to you? I'm not going to ask you all that today, but I have learned from my podcast that while there's common threads, everyone's got a completely different, fundamentally different idea of freedom. So that's the one thing I've learned from all the podcasts I've done. Of the different guests that you've had, I guess, what are the things that you've learned that is a common thread amongst the various guests when you look at your theme of unlearning things? Or has there been one?
Ooh, I know a good one to this. Every single person that we have talked about that has overcome something which is literally everyone, has put a great emphasis on community and on building other people up. And that's been in every single one of our shows that we've had. And, so I think it just more drives home like the need for you to build up your like own specific community, you know?
Awesome. Very cool.
And I think helping others through different means, like taking their experience and projecting that out into the world in a way that actually helps others. And it's completely different with everybody, how they're accomplishing that. But I think really using their experiences to help others is a pretty common thing.
Jake totally disagrees. No, I'm kidding. Kidding.
Oh my God, lady. We need to talk about your answers.
Jake's like, I'll totally edit that out at the end.
Give you
All the power.
First, I got to fire Sonny, then I got to edit out Lacey's comment. This is gonna be a long Saturday.
Lacey actually asked to be edited out one time. She was like, please do not use that. Please.
He didn't. He did not edit it out though.
Because Sonny and I constantly say that we are just riding the coattails of all these famous women. We're just here to help them shine. So whatever they ask, your wish is my command.
Ridiculous.
Oh man.
So Curt, thank you so much for making some time for us. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know on behalf of all of the co-hosts, thank you so much for everything that you do and continue to do, as well as being a part of the Unlearn show. So thank you once again.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been a pleasure. And I've always wondered about the behind the scenes, and now I know. By the way, the snacks in your green room are incredible.